All right.
Already.
All right. Here we go. Usually I'm like introducing and all that. Okay, cool. This is going to be a really fun episode. For everybody listening, I want to introduce you to Matt Silverman.
Hey.
So Matt is our videographer. Just joined Ascent Digital in June. Been with us for a few months. And I was originally going to do like a solo podcast episode. And I went out on social media and I asked everybody for Q&As and all of that stuff. And I realized it'd be more fun if it was a little more interactive. So I asked Matt if he would humor me and join and be the one asking the question. So really appreciate you being here. Thanks for helping make it a little bit more, engaging and conversational and things like that. So we're going to do the best we can. But also kind of fun. This is our 1-year anniversary for the Chasing Greatness podcast. So I believe this will be my 55th, maybe 56th episode. I've lost track now, but it's definitely on the 1-year mark. So what better time than to do a little Q&A and, kind of dive in. So anyway, thanks a ton for helping me out with it.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, in no particular order, and just so everyone knows, these are the questions that we were asked through social media. So these are all questions that came from the audience, from the viewers, and I'm going to do my best to answer them authentically and vulnerable. I feel nervous being in the hot seat this round.
Yeah, I feel like we should have switched chairs for this.
We totally should have been on the other side of the table, literally. Yeah.
Alrighty, let's get started. What is a belief or perspective you've held that has changed dramatically since you began your podcast, and what triggered that shift?
Starting with the easy ones, huh? I don't know that there's necessarily been beliefs or perspectives that have changed since I've started the podcast, but there's definitely been beliefs and perspectives that have been better formulated or more, I've been able to articulate them better. One of the things that's been interesting I found through, 55 or so interviews with people that inspire me has been that I've always kind of I've intrinsically known these certain things, whether it's like the power of discipline or eating healthy or how beneficial exercising is or, leadership traits or whatever it might be. But I've never been able to articulate it properly or talk to somebody that, is a true expert in the field. And so I don't know that necessarily, beliefs or opinions have necessarily been changed, but they've been sharpened, like they've been perfected and more grounded and things like that. I do think that it's been really, really fun to learn from people. And every time I've had a conversation with somebody, I've had a nugget of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to take that home, or, these exciting things. I'm trying to think of some examples right now off the top of my head, but there's been and probably in every single episode where they've said something or shared a perspective or shared an insight, an approach to life or whatever it might be. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how powerful of a way of thinking of it or a way of saying it might be. So I know that's a little bit of a non-answer, that I don't know that I've necessarily had beliefs or perspectives challenged or changed, but I have learned a ton and gained new appreciation and, solidified kind of existing beliefs and perspectives. Do you feel like that answers it?
Yeah, to an extent. You talked a lot about different lessons you've learned and like nuggets you've taken away from each of the episodes. What's one that stands out to you?
Yeah, I had a guest on that was injured in a really bad car accident, and she's now in a wheelchair. And she had this amazing perspective on how good life can still be. Like, I was asking her about her number one takeaway emotion from, this life-changing accident that left her paralyzed for life and in a wheelchair and all that. And her response was gratitude. And it was so cool. Like that's an example of, hundreds of these moments of like, wow, somebody with such strong mental resilience and such a cool perspective for me to say, it just puts things into perspective of if I'm having a bad day or, woe is me, when somebody has such a different mental strength and mental fortitude to look at things like that with perspective. And I'm trying to think exactly how she worded that because it's been a while, but is basically that like her approach was that every day is a good day because good will come from it. And there's little things like that that have happened over and over and over again that, stick with me for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a good segue into our next question. You're a very gracious person. I've noticed that in my short time here. And like in our Monday meetings, we do a little gratitude exercise with the whole team. Have you always been so positive? And was there a moment or life event that inspired that?
Yeah. So, yes, I have always been this positive. In fact, when I was preparing these questions, I texted my mom and my dad and I asked them, have I always been this positive? And they texted back, yeah, that I was, which, so I've reflected on that quite a bit because even though I've always had a propensity for positivity and I've always viewed the world as, my glass has always been half full and I've always kind of been able to see the silver lining in things, so to speak. One thing that I've done a lot of work on is intentionality. And I've learned through, however many years of being intentional about gratitude and happiness and kind of like living these more fulfilling, rich lives, that there are things that contribute to that and then things that take away from that and then learning the difference between the two and then obviously doing more of the things that that make me feel better. Gratitude is one of them. And so I while I've always had sort of this natural optimism about me and this tendency, I've also perfected it and honed in on it and leveraged it because I've realized how absolutely powerful that attitude of gratitude can be. And so it's kind of a two-part answer. I've got a natural tendency to be grateful and to be optimistic. But over the last, probably I'd say 15 years, my adult life, I'd say really, I've learned that if I lean into that, other components of my life go better. There's an interesting example that I'll share, but I ran the Silverton Alpine Ultra. I ran the 50K at the beginning of July. Mm-hmm. And I think I told you guys about this in one of our meetings, but I was just intentionally enjoying the whole race and having that kind of attitude of gratitude and thanking the volunteers for being out there and thanking the aid station and giving compliments to people when I would pass them or whatever it might be. And it was fascinating because while we were all experiencing the same thing, we were all running the same race, it was visibly crystal clear that with different mindsets and different mentalities, we were having different experiences. So even though we were experiencing the same thing, we were having different personal experiences that tied into our mindsets. And so those are those little things that I have found forever. And like I remember there was a while back, my wife used to ride horses for a ranch down in La Plata, New Mexico, when we didn't have two pennies to rub together. We were poor. We were just getting started. And she worked out this agreement with these ranchers that we could come down and exercise their horses because she had a love for horses. So it was like a win-win that she'd ride the horses and they'd get exercise and we'd get to ride them. But we were riding down and there was just like a pretty view or whatever. And I pointed out, how nice the view was. And she mentioned that I had made an impact on kind of her perspective of noticing things like that and then verbalizing the gratitude for it. And that was such a little tiny thing 15 years ago. And so I do think that gratitude is something we can all practice and optimism is something we can practice too. I'm also a huge believer that our perspectives become reality. And so as it relates to the optimism side of that question, like if we really believe that things can go a certain way, they do. And it's been a powerful, I'm trying to think how to explain it because it's just been a powerful, cool thing for me to experience throughout my life to trust that things are going to go well. do the work and then,
Not always an easy thing to trust.
right. And it's not just like blind trust, it's also backed with a great deal amount of preparation and work and, doing the things that can set it up for success too. But yeah, anyway, to kind of a long-winded answer, but I have definitely always been optimistic and positive and have the gratitude mindset, but I've worked on it and perfected it and honed in on it the last probably 10, 15 years.
Yeah, that's a great thing to hone in on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next question. How do you balance family, exercise, sleep, and work? It's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you do it.
Family, exercise, sleep, and work. Yeah, so for everybody listening, I'm a father. I've got 3 kids. I'm an entrepreneur. I run Ascent Digital. I also host a podcast. Sleep and work. What were the family?
Family, exercise, sleep, and work.
Yeah. So I exercise often, spend time with my family, sleep as best I can, and work. And how do I balance it? Well, so I make sure to prioritize things. I schedule what I can into my schedule. Like for example, my exercise is scheduled in. That's a non-negotiable thing. You know that.
Yeah.
Every day at 10 o'clock, I'm walking out the door and going on to exercise, which that helps me balance exercise and work. But I'm so far from perfect. I don't know that I balance it. I don't know how well I do balance it. I think I do a really good job in fluxes. So like I'll have weekends with the family that are all in on family time, or I'll have weekends that I'm working and traveling, and we've got a big trip coming up at the end of the month that'll be pretty much all consumed work. Or I'll have weekends when I'm like when I ran my 100-miler, there was nothing to do other than run for the whole weekend.
Not a lot you can do in that situation.
Right. So I don't know that balance always happens, but intentionally prioritizing them does happen. And so there's somewhat of a pendulum, I think. But the other thing is I've been pretty intentional about trying to create a life that has space for all of those things to coexist. I'll be exercising and checking my, emailing from my phone, or we've got the play space here at the office so that the kids can come in if I need to when I'm on meetings or whatever it might be. I had a boss a while back at my last job who taught me the concept of work-life integration as opposed to work-life balance. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I have found success, is that I've integrated my lifestyle into my work. Mm-hmm. Like for me, running is part of my brand, so it's something that it's not going to take away from work at all. In fact, I think it enhances my work, my productivity at work. Being a family-owned business and leaning into being a father and, and also the work is for the kids too. So that helps with kind of those dilemmas. And then I just don't get enough sleep, especially right now. Carter had his tonsils removed. I was telling you guys earlier, I feel like I'm in the newborn stage again. I've been getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep per night, but so I don't know if balance is even necessarily the right word, but it's almost like segments of like I'm all in on different parts of my life at different times, which I guess maybe at a macro level creates balance.
Yeah. You got to have all the parts to equal the whole.
Right.
Building off of that one, what is your why for running? Honestly, running a 100-mile race, running a 50-mile race is insane.
Yeah.
What is driving you to do that?
My why for running, there could probably be a whole podcast episode on that.
And there should be.
Yeah. Then there should be. A few different reasons. So one is I genuinely want to inspire people. I am not at all athletically gifted. I've I've always had to work harder than most at things, at anything that I've done. So one thing I want everyone to know is that like you can run a 100 miler too. You know, like I'm not the athlete or the guy with special genes or whatever. You saw me earlier today. I was laying on the floor because my back's hurting today. So I genuinely want to make a positive impact on the world, and I would love to inspire people through my running. And I've found, it kind of comes into the gratitude and optimism piece. It's like I've found that if I do certain things in my life, that it makes me happy, it makes me feel good. And I want everyone to be happy. I want everyone to feel good. There were chapters of my life when, I'd be envious of how much money people made or how big their house was or whatever. And all that stuff is so far gone now because I really genuinely want everyone I love to feel good, live their best life, be happy, and all these things. So that's one reason is I want to inspire people. That's why I post it every day when I'm running. I do a post because I want everyone to know I'm out running and that they can be running too, and hopefully inspire people. I've often been concerned that comes across as, arrogant or like braggadocious, which is not the intention at all. It genuinely is an attempt to be inspiring and motivating and have other people get active. One of my favorite things that's ever happened, and it's happened a fair amount of times now, is that people will message me and say that they're running because of me, that I inspired them to run or whatever. And there's many of those occasions have happened now. And it's probably one of the most fulfilling things that can happen for me when I know that I have actually made an impact on somebody's life and cheering for them. There's
that measurement of an impact that you made.
Yeah. And it feels so real. And it's a cool thing because then this positive feedback loop happens of like, that's awesome. By them sharing it, it motivated me. And then, hopefully we motivate others and like create this kind of community of motivation. So that's one reason. Mm-hmm. Two other reasons that I can think of. The second one is that I have had some pretty intense battles with anxiety. I'm not sure, like pinpointing it on, where or what or how it came from, but my best guess is that I've had some near misses during backcountry hunts and wildland firefighting and then I had kids, and it all kind of has accumulated into some pretty intense, like life crippling anxiety that I've dealt with. And I'm not talking about anxious feelings. I'm talking about full-blown anxiety. Like you lose control of your senses, like full-blown anxiety. And where it had presented itself was in wilderness, outdoor adventure type situations. And so I ended up with some conflicting realities where the thing that has made me the happiest has always been outdoor adventures, exercise, lifestyle. The thing that was causing me the most pain and misery was that also. And so it started off almost logically of like, okay, if I can get in good enough shape to know no matter how far in I am, I can get out, maybe that'll help my anxiety.
It's a pretty good feeling.
And I thought like, okay. And so, I actually very intentionally started running to address the anxiety from a logical perspective, like thinking that if I knew that I was in good enough shape that it would subside my anxiety. And then I ran marathons. I think I ran my first marathon in 2019, maybe, but I've been running marathons for a while. And marathon shape isn't enough to overcome anxiety logically. But what I found is that the process started to heal me. Running, processing things, dealing with my traumas, dealing with my stresses, dealing with my issues in a healthy way was starting to solve the anxiety side of it. So what started as like me thinking that 1 + 1 = 2, if I was in good enough shape to get out, I wouldn't have anxiety. I still got to the equation equaling 2, but it was 1 plus, all this algebra, whatever, the equation got complicated. And then the third would be, so the anxiety side of it for sure. And then the third, honestly, it's meditative for me. I'm not unlike everybody else in the world, that I've had my fair share of challenges and traumas and these trials and tribulations that we all deal with. And I have found that running is such a healthy outlet to deal with that stuff, and it lets me get meditative. It also, though, helps me have great ideas. Like, I do some of my best thinking. I'm working right now on a presentation for Economic Development Alliance, and sometimes I'll go running and I'll turn off my music just to like be thinking of ideas. It's where my creative juices start to flow. It's where I have business ideas. It's where I'm like, ooh, we should do this, or I should start that, or whatever it might be. So you kind of combine those three things: inspiring others, dealing with my anxiety, and then meditation. For me, it's when I get to meditate.
Yeah, absolutely. Before you found these inspirations to do all of these things, running, business, all of it, were you a slug? Were you unmotivated? And what was the change that got you to this point?
Yeah. So I've never been unmotivated, or a slug or anything like that. Trying to think of kind of the timeline on it. There's been, in college, I went against some familial norms. I sort of broke the mold in my family from a religious perspective, from a college perspective. Like, my path deviated from the family normal path, which caused a few years of loneliness, of kind of like, I'm on my own, I got to make this happen type of thing. And so I sort of developed this "screw you, watch me" mentality, but I wouldn't use that word. I'd use one that starts with the letter F. So a lot of my drive in those days was coming from almost a prove them wrong perspective. Like, they say I won't be happy if I do this, or I can't be successful if I go about it this way, or even a little example is like, I was told forever that I was not athletic enough to play college football. I'm like, watch me, I'll figure out a way to make it happen. Or when I was in college, everyone's like, you can't make it in Durango. There's no jobs, there's no economy. Everyone graduates college and leaves. And I was like, watch me. Like, I'll find a way to make it happen in Durango. And so there was kind of these, like, maybe I'd call them unhealthy, but the motivation was coming from a place of like proving people wrong. And then it sort of has transitioned now to a way more healthy, motivation and drive and things like that. I remember, and I've said it many times on the podcast with other guests, that my belief of how we use social media and how we need to be intentional about the type of content that we consume. I recall a time I was working retail at Garden Sports Sporting Goods. It's how I paid my way through college. And I would listen to Eric Thomas, if anybody's heard of him. And I've kind of outgrown him now. But these like motivational speeches put to hip hop music, and I don't know, I just liked it. But he has this one about being great and how like you can't be great if you're not also doing the dishes and folding the laundry, and it's kind of a nod at this idea of kind of holistic greatness. And I remember I had a sales job, and I remember I was driving to a sales call or a meeting or something that I just didn't want to be going to it. And I listened to that and I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to set all this aside and just do the work, like get motivated and disciplined almost. And it was a catalyst for me because I learned that I can turn it on and off, like that I can be positive and motivated and excited for things if I choose to be, which was a really powerful, kind of profound moment of clarity for me that I would love for other people to experience and see. Not to be harsh, but it's like, it doesn't matter how you feel. You can, I mean, right now, I was tired. I'm sipping on my water because I've been talking all day. My back's hurt, like whatever. But it's like, okay, let's turn it on for the podcast. Like, let's turn it on for the meeting or whatever it might be. And so it's kind of a lot like that question of if I've always had the gratitude and optimism mindset or who I was before, all of this. I think they're kind of similar answers, that there's been components of that have always been there, but I've learned how to harness it. Like, I've learned how to turn it on and realize that you can make every day a good day if you decide to. Like, you can turn it on and you can set the stresses aside and kind of compartmentalize these parts of our life to be who you need to be at the moment during the time, and then, obviously recharge and things like that when you can. So I don't know if I've ever been what did the question refer to as, a slug?
Yeah. Were you a slug, unmotivated, and what was the change that got you to this point?
Yeah. Yeah. And to elaborate on that a little further, I mean, I definitely haven't always been, this like high performer, motivational guy. Like, I went through my party stage in college, and, I've had different goals and things like that. So I don't know. Yeah. But I again, it's like these things of like, I've figured out the formula of things that make my life feel more fulfilled, things that make me feel happier and more excited and things like that. And then you just create these positive momentum, positive feedback loop where you get a little bit of that and then you want more of it and off to the races. So it's been an evolution thing, but I'm by no means just like a different person.
Yeah, absolutely. What you were saying with like choosing to make every day great, like one thing that's really stuck with me, and for some reason it's popped into my head a lot in the past year, is that when I was in middle school, every morning the morning announcements would come on, and at the end of it, the principal would say, "Make it a great day or not, the choice is yours."
No way.
And I forgot about that for years and just started remembering it this
Interesting.
year. It really is something that we choose to do every day. And
Yeah.
it's a really powerful mindset to have.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I like your principle.
Yeah, me too.
Seems like a wise guy.
What is the greatest fear that you have, and how have you overcome it?
Well, I mean,
that could be two questions. What's the greatest fear you've overcome, and what's the greatest fear that you have?
I was going to say, because I don't know, my greatest fear is losing my family.
Yeah.
By far. And I don't know that I'll ever overcome.
I don't think there is.
Yeah, that's like, scared to even like speak that out. But, that's definitely my greatest fear. But, a less one, or one that I've overcome, running ultras. Yeah. So I talked about anxiety, and if people that are listening are probably going to think this is BS, and I got to tell you, it's not. The single scariest thing I could think of is some long distance single track adventure. I wish I could articulate it strongly enough for people to understand that I used to get crippling anxiety if I would take my kids fishing at a lake that I drove to, because I was away from civilization, or like if there was no cell phone service or whatever, like I would get terrified. But I want to also be the best father I can be. And that's actually a lot of the driving force behind this. And so I started to identify like, okay, I've got to deal with this stuff, because I can't be the father I want to be if I'm afraid to have rich experiences with my family. If rich experiences with my family are causing anxiety, I've got to deal with that so that I can be the father that I want to be.
You can't let the anxiety stand in the way of living the life that you want to live.
Exactly. And so I thought, what's the scariest thing I can think of? And very sincerely, it's being alone, essentially, with no gear, no like survival equipment or whatever, in a remote area, by myself. And so I did that. I faced it head on and intentionally, purposefully put myself in the scariest environments I could imagine, and then thrived through it, which has been really, really exciting for me. There's a hike here in Durango called Crater Lake, and it's a 6 mile out. It's 6 miles to the lake and then 6 miles back. So it's like a 12 and a half mile round trip hike. And in college, we used to go and backpack there. The trailhead is a place called Andrews Lake. And again, it's almost embarrassing to say out loud, but it's true. So whatever. Andrews Lake is a pretty busy. There's a paved parking lot. There's bathrooms. There's like a dock built. Like it's a place, you know.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, I went up there with my family, and I had anxiety there, of just like I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm out of control of the situation. I'm thinking through these like contingency plans of how we'll get home if my car doesn't start. Like I've totally taken away from the experience. And again, one of those indicators of like, okay, I've got to do the work and heal from this stuff. And this summer, I ran to Crater Lake and back, which was I was really proud of that, because I used to be afraid at the trailhead, and now I ran, to the lake and back, and I just did it head on. There's another interesting kind of anecdote to that about forks in the road in our lives, or like, facing our fears head on or whatever it might be. But I remember vividly before my first road marathon, I was having anxiety because I didn't know where it was. I was worried about going off course, which now in hindsight is humorous. I'm running the marathon again actually in a couple of weeks with my wife, and it's crazy. It's busy and it's on the highway. But I was terrified, and I almost didn't go. Mm-hmm. I remember the night before thinking through how I could justify not going. Mm-hmm. Like my ankle kind of hurts. I'm not all the way over, trained. I'm by myself and whatever. And my dad was super supportive, and I woke up that next morning to go, and my dad was up too. I was going on my own either way, but I know my dad woke up to make sure I went. I know that, in hindsight I did.
Get you out the door.
Yeah.
Give you the kick in the butt.
And so it's been cool because so then I went and did that. And then, I think back to that moment, like what a different life I would have had I not shown up. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that it would completely change the trajectory of my life. At the time it was just running the marathon, but now it's led to all these other things. And I think there's so many of those moments in all of our lives, of like, did we do the courageous thing? Did we face our fears? Did we show up? Did we do the harder path? Did we do the thing that had to have happen? Mm-hmm. Because it proves to ourselves that what we're capable of. And mine has been a years-long journey of stacking evidence that I am strong, I am capable, I can do these things. Another takeaway I had, I had Ashley Dixon was a guest on the podcast, and she taught me this idea of that I trust myself, which I took away in such a powerful way of like, and I apply that to ultras so many times now of I trust myself. I'm in shape, I've done the training, I've got the gear, I know where I am. I trust myself. And it's different than like, believing in ourselves or believing in the race directors for having it handled or whatever. So yeah, that's I think one of the fears that I have faced, that I've overcome, that I'm super proud of. But another one's starting my company.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really scary thing. Yeah.
So I remember it was, I was kind of getting to the point where I knew I had reached the ceiling of, my corporate career path, and it was time to go. I had 2 kids at the house. I had the corner office and the salary that went with it. I mean, I had it all, but I knew I needed to do more. And I had my resignation letter typed up, and I could not hit send because the fear of the unknown was like crippling. Mm-hmm. And my dad came down once again and was super supportive and, helped me hit send on that. But I think so many times in life, we short ourselves from greatness or happiness or our potential because of fear. And for me, those are 2 very, I think, prominent examples of them is now I can run 100 miles in the wilderness, and now I'm, I own a multi-million-dollar agency, but I couldn't do either had I not faced the fear of the first step. And it was so unknown and out there. But facing fear is a powerful experience because on the other side of that is a rich life, rich experiences. I mean, you just moved here. That had to have been scary. Like
It's terrifying. For the viewers out there, I'd spent roughly 3 hours in Durango before I moved here. I didn't know where I was going to live, and I just took the job
and sent it.
Sent it.
And now you've already done some really cool projects here. Your girlfriend's moving down.
Here.
It's and I just think that we sell ourselves short so many times because we let fear stop us from action.
Yeah.
And whether it's like anxiety, like true, real fear, like I have on some cases, or quitting my job because I had a family to support, overriding the fear and knowing that we're stronger than we think we are, we're capable of more than we think we are, we can go further than we think we can, all these things.
Yeah.
The other side of fear is it's amazing.
Yeah.
We have to do it.
Every single thing that I've done in my life that I'm look back on and like, that's one of the coolest things I've ever done. I was terrified.
Right.
Like, could barely motivate myself to start it.
Right.
Like, every one of those experiences, I think I'm a much better person because I've had it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's like when Doug Miller has been on, and he talked to me, taught me all about the benefits of being out of our comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly that. That's where fear is, but that's also where growth happens and where opportunity lies and these rich life experiences. The way he explained it to me was that life is an amusement park, and you can either ride the merry-go-round, which is safe and consistent and, whatever, or you can get on the dang roller coaster and live it and feel the highs and feel the lows and have the fear and the rushes and the excitement that you did it and the pain of failure. All of those things, like I look back at the entrepreneurship journey and boy, highs are high and the lows are low.
Yeah.
But they make you feel things like it's rich. Mm-hmm. It's, even when it doesn't work, you're glad you did it because you've learned something or you felt something or whatever. So yeah, two examples. I don't know that I'll ever overcome my greatest fear.
Yeah.
But that's life. You love hard, you hurt hard. That's how that goes.
Yeah. High risk, high reward.
Right.
Yeah. What's your greatest weakness? We've talked a lot about things you're good at and strengths, and let's flip the coin.
Yeah. My greatest weakness, I have many. I'm a pleaser. I'm a people pleaser. And so I have a very, very hard time setting boundaries. I have a very, very challenging time saying no to stuff. And what'll happen is I'll way overextend myself across the board, and I'll end up exhausted and burned out and these things like that. I also, it's kind of interesting, there's an episode that is about to be out with Michelle Coy. It'll be out by the time anybody's listening to this. But she was talking to me about the difference between self-confidence and self-value, or like loving ourselves versus having confidence in ourselves. And self-confidence is tied to accomplishments. And I've always been a very confident person. I've also, though, very accomplished a lot. Like and it provided some clarity. And it actually when we did our personality test last week, this brought some of this to the surface as well. But one thing I'm working on that I need to be better about is that I tie my self-worth to my accomplishments, which I've learned now that's not self-worth, that's self-confidence. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is that it's fleeting. Like when I accomplish something, I'm proud of myself and I like who I am. I've got to learn how to value myself separate from my accomplishments. And I think that's probably going to be a lifelong endeavor because part of it's how I'm wired. Part of it's, traumas from growing up. Part of it's, how I was raised, all these things that have come into play there. But that's a weakness of mine for sure, because I And it's that like cliche, if you're in a job interview and you're like, well, I work too hard. It's like, no, I sincerely do. Like,
Yeah.
I very sincerely, I don't let myself be proud of, like, the other day I was on my run with my wife just yesterday. And I was like, why am I not more proud of what I've built? Like, why do I still, I have this insatiable desire to build more and to be more successful and to get a bigger audience and, all these things. And I'm torn with that because part of me doesn't ever want that to go away. I love that I have that. But I would love also to figure out how to balance it to be proud of where I am and have self value, like value myself. We're separate from that stuff. So it's something that I'm working on, but that's a huge weakness of mine. And then the other one I can think of would be that I need, and probably it's tied to the self value, but I need people to like me. Like if people don't, if I'm not viewed positively by somebody, I guess it's tied in with being a people pleaser, but like if conflict, I'm like, how can we, make sure we're all good personally, which sometimes is to a detriment to either me personally or my business or whatever, because I'm too much of anyway, the pleaser, people liking me side of it.
Yeah. Switching gears a bit, this is something that we've been talking a lot recently as the anniversary of it just happened. Why did you quit drinking alcohol?
Yeah, great question. Because I want to be the best version of myself, and alcohol doesn't contribute to that. Mm-hmm. So it was on my birthday, mm-hmm. and we were driving up to Utah, same with my parents, and Utah has crazy liquor laws.
It's a fun place.
Yeah, and as it went, I got to my parents' house and the liquor store was closed, and I remember being like a little frustrated about that. Not a little. I remember being frustrated that it was closed, and so
what was it? 6 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Like it shouldn't have been closed. And then I thought, well, and it was actually the day before my birthday. I thought, well, what a good excuse to take a break then. And so that was kind of the catalyst of it. I also, though, have family members that struggle with alcoholism, and we've been in rehabs and family counseling, and I come from a long line of addictive personalities with my extended family, my immediate family, and everybody. And so part of it's the same reason why I run. I'm trying to inspire by example and show people that there are formulas that can contribute to a better life, whether it's running or saving our money or investing in our marriages or not drinking alcohol. There are things we can all do that will enhance our experience here on this earth, and so part of me wants to show people that like I'm happy, I'm feeling good, I'm sleeping better, I'm processing my traumas, my all of these things. When it started, I did not think it would be permanent. When I quit drinking, I was like, well, I'll do it for a month. And then I signed up for my first ultra, and I was like, well, I'll stay sober till my first ultra, and then whatever. And then honestly, now I can't even think about it. Like my life has been so enriched since I've been sober that I can't even explain the positive impact that it's had on me. I mean, literally, my anxiety has vanished. In fact, it's almost comical. I didn't need to run 100-milers. I just had to stop drinking, and I wouldn't have had the battles with anxiety that I've had. Of course, running 100-milers and not drinking, certainly helps. Yeah. But I'm sleeping better. I'm more present. I'm a better father. I look better. When take my shirt off, I look better. I'm leaner. I'm feeling better. Across the board, indescribably healthier, just from cutting it out. And so that's why because I'm trying to live the best life I can live, and I'm trying to be the best example that I can be. I'm happier without it. So that's why. And I should clarify for everybody, I never had a problem with alcohol. I shared a quote on my Instagram the other day that people say that, alcohol is the only drug that if you don't do, people assume you have a problem. Like if I'm like, oh, I don't drink, they're like, oh, no, I never had a problematic relationship with alcohol. I would drink, a nightcap or two, and I would have moderate amounts of alcohol frequently. So I would drink a couple drinks and go to bed or whatever. And even that, it has catapulted me. Like I wish I could better articulate the profound impact that removing alcohol from my life has had. But yeah, and now I'm just sticking with it because I can't imagine going back. Yeah, it's like I'm so much happier and healthier, and it's cutting it out is maybe the single best thing I've ever done.
Yeah, great. This is a question that I'm very invested in the answering. What are the best and worst parts about having employees?
That's a deep one.
Choose your words very carefully.
Best and worst parts about having employees. Well, I love having employees. I love the team that we're building. I love the company that we're building. I love I believe that I need to surround myself with people that are more talented than I am. I am talented at certain things. I'm very not talented at others. And so if I didn't have employees, I wouldn't be able to do even remotely close to the things that we do at Ascent Digital. So, there's those components of it. I love one of the most fulfilling things about it for me personally is I'm really proud of the economic impact that I'm making. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that I created an opportunity for you to get a job and move to Durango. Like that is exciting for me.
And it's not a place I ever thought that I would have an opportunity to live.
Right.
It's just different.
Yeah. And I love so many of our clients aren't here locally. And so I love the fact that I'm bringing economic stimulus into the region and creating jobs and opportunities for people. But also they lift me up. I am not naive enough to think that I have all the answers. So I love it when we have roundtable discussions or, I get to learn from the team or share different perspectives or whatever it might be. The hardest part about having employees is that I want everyone to like me, honestly, which sometimes doesn't contribute to being the most effective leader. I think those weaknesses of me being too much of a pleaser sometimes can apply to the employee world too, where I'm sometimes a little bit too, I don't know if easygoing is the right word, but too much of a pleaser on that front as well. And also employees are stressful. Everyone has needs all the time. This is not me venting, so don't worry. But I've told my wife on many occasions, I'm like, between my kids, my clients, or my employees, someone needs me 24/7.
Yeah.
24/7, somebody needs me. And the dynamic of my role is that I don't get to tell people when I'm in need.
Yeah.
I have to be the guy that's strong, sitting at the head of the table, sitting in the corner, whatever, and rally, and shoulder it. So there's been times, and again, this isn't, it's not a bad thing. It's the reality. But there's been times when I'm dealing with shit, like fighting life battles, whatever, losing my dog or dealing with, whatever these things, and employees need me, and you have to find the space for that. Like you have to recognize that it's a symbiotic relationship, and my role in that relationship is to be there when people need me too. And again, it's those conflicting realities that I also love the fact that that's the hat I get to wear. I love the fact that I get to be the support guy and, the one that people text when they need something or, need the time off or come in late, those things. So that's both the best and the worst. But no, honestly, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I having employees I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the fact that the company's big enough to have. I mean, how many we have?
There's six.
Six full-time employees. Yeah, I'm so proud of that.
7?
Yeah, I'm thrilled with it. So it's mostly only a good thing.
Yeah. All right. I have one more question for you, but before we get to that, I just wanted to see if you had any final thoughts wrapping up a year of the podcast, any major takeaways, things you want to look forward to in the next year and after that.
Yeah, that I'm loving podcasting.
Yeah.
It's a labor of love for sure. But I'm loving having the long form one-on-one conversations. I think that it's the coolest thing ever. We don't have that. I mean, even you and I right now, we never have, nobody ever gets to sit down and have long form one-on-one conversations without distraction. So I'm loving that. I'm loving how I'm getting to meet new people. I'm learning new things. I'm getting more inspired. I'm getting more knowledge. I hope that I'm not the only one getting that. I hope that I'm positively impacting people elsewhere too, that people are listening and that we're spreading some good for the world, because it's like we're both in our Inspired by Example shirts and we've got the sign. But I'm hoping the optimist in me, coming back to some of these other questions, I've got this big grand vision of changing the world, man. Like I want thousands of Inspired by Example shirts to be out there, because when you're wearing one that you need to live the best version of your life that you can at the minute and inspire others. It's kind of my version of paying it forward. It's like, if we're all inspiring by example, we're all going to be living the best lives that we can be living. We're also going to be bringing people along with us, since we're doing it through example and all of these great things. So no, I love it. We're just getting started with it, and I'm going to stick with it until I can't. Like I'm going to keep finding the guests and having the shows and putting it out until I run out of guests to talk to, or people are sick of hearing from it. But yeah, no, it's wild to look back on year one. I like to think that I've hopefully become a better host on the podcast. I think I've definitely had a lot of personal development and growth along the way too. And so hopefully I continue to get better, and then the content and the topics of conversation keep getting better.
Absolutely.
Too.
Yeah. Who's going forward? You've had some awesome guests on here so far. Who's your dream guest?
Ooh.
If you could have one person in the next episode.
Yeah. Courtney DeWalter.
It's a good answer.
Yeah. If I had to pick my dream guest, it'd probably be Courtney DeWalter.
Yeah. I'd be pretty stoked if she came into the office.
I mean, it'd be really fun, because what a fascinating, you talk about her mindset with like the pain cave and all that, but she's somebody who has also those attitudes of gratitude and like, all of these things with her.
And she's just a badass.
Yeah. And just an all around badass. But also there's so many other people. I'm loving when I get to talk to, I honestly, regardless of if somebody's famous or has a big following or whatever, that's the name that's popping into my head, because like that's a great goal, and it'd be really cool if that ever happened. This is going to sound weird, but I'd love to have people on that have a bigger audience than I do, because I think that through them we can get the message out better. Like they can help kind of catapult it. So if I had to pick one dream guest, that'd be who I'd pick. But
Sweet.
definitely pursuing many guests.
Yeah. All right. Just to wrap it up, we have a question from our very own Chase. He wants to know who cuts your hair.
I do. Great. That was a great ending question.
Yeah.
Thanks for humoring me. Thanks for asking the questions. Everybody listening, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for being here for the last year, for 55, 56 episodes, however many it is now. Keep inspiring by example. We're just getting started.
Yeah. Awesome.
And thanks for making me be vulnerable and sit in the hot seat. I hope I did okay. I feel like
you did great.
Crazy about it, but
a great conversation.
We got it done. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Sweet.